Hello and welcome to yet another edition of Time Pass with the wonderful Rajiv Menon. I just watched Kandukondan again last night, and my God, I'm in love with it all over it again. I think Sudhir Srinivasan, my co-anchor, entertainment editor of the New Indian Express, will agree with me. It is a movie 20 years now that still stands. It's ageless, it's timeless, and it still speaks to us so well, especially to women. And I just wanted to thank you all over again for it. It's just so wonderful.
Thank you, sir.
Do you sometimes recall it and say, how did you ever accomplish something that's so perfect?
Oh, that's a big compliment. Well, I must congratulate Jane Austen for writing a great novel and being able to adapt it into India, because sometimes out of the stuffy West Victorian kind of mansions, to see it in India and to see it in the present light and to see how women's positions have changed now is important. I think to contemporize the conflicts and look at it was really the challenge.
Right. And of course, the wonderful casting. I think both Tabu and Aishwarya still look as wonderful, and so does Mammootty, Ajit. All of them are just, how did you put that cast together? We have to quickly talk about it before we talk about anything else.
Yeah, it's just something that happened, because I was walking with Mani one day and I was talking about my life and my brother and things like that, and how, in a family you can have two completely different types of, both living in the same place but can be different. So he said, why don't you try making a film of that? So I said, about brothers, and so let me look at literature, and I started picking this up, and I found certain patterns in all of, like, I found very difficult to script Pride and Prejudice because there were 5 children and father and mother. This was a little easier, mother and 3 daughters, and then Emma being just a father and daughter. So I kind of watched that pattern of, when there are 5 children, then the competition is who's going to get married, and when there are 2, then what's happening, and then when there's 1, what is happening. So I think Emma is more gray. So I was studying all that, and then I said, why don't I try this? And then to cast 2 people is so difficult, And so casting was an absolute nightmare, but I had probably the best music for a long time, and also the performances of everybody, full commitment, when they were there on the set. It's just that they were so busy that my shoot got stretched over a year. But at that time, people could tolerate all that for, shooting a film over 1 year's time. But now you want to finish a film in one go, because that's a lot of economic sense. But each time gives you a new kind of opportunity and a new kind of storytelling, and you look forward for that.
So welcome back to direction again. Of course, you made Sarvam Thalamayam. Please forgive me my Tamil. And now this anthology of short films in which you have a segment as well, which seems very interesting. Leela Sampson and Andrea Jeremiah, if I'm not mistaken. Again, Leela was in OK Kanmani. She was such a revelation. I think the first time that she was acting on screen. So talk a little about how this came about among the many, many projects that you've done, not done, how this finally came together.
Yeah, I think after Sarvam, you get your mojo back into direction and you want to tell stories again. In between I was shooting cinematography for Guru and Kadal and all that, but and also I started an institute. So many things. So one kept trying to write, but things just kept getting postponed. So you need to sort of jump off the cliff at some point and make a film. So I did that with Sarvam, and when I did that. A lot more people say, "Oh, this guy is still directing, and
he's still alive."
He's not a 2-film wonder. Probably he can do something more. So when this opportunity came up, and they were looking at people to really do something during the COVID, and everybody's locked inside, and it's hopeless, and people are saying, let's bring pots and pans and some divine intervention will come, and in that state you are in, and suddenly you've got a possibility that we don't know how long you're going to be stuck like this. So in that point, and you're only television is only giving you bad news after bad news. So more people are dying, MPs are dying. I mean, the US president is getting infected.
Yeah.
Secret Service cannot stop it. I mean, it's that state at which things are going. And then what happens to entertainment industry? What happens to a whole lot of musicians? What happens? This is what you're hearing every day. And top of it, one main star goes and commits suicide. So it's like every day you see, and then when you stop it, then there's 2 cyclones on one side. Then when you stop it, then there's already China attack. It's just every week it is one worse news. In that moment, somebody's telling you make a film. So you want to say, can you give a story of hope?
Yeah.
So it's like how people are coping with this COVID and how there is hope. And it's just not, laugh riot we're talking about. It's about bittersweet stories where people go through a sense of struggle, but actually come out stronger and believing in each other and in themselves in the process. Is what the challenge was. So you're basically reacting to a situation around you and also writing and shooting through the pandemic. So that I found quite challenging. So it's like a just a minute session, like jam session, like you had in college. Can I speak on anything at any given point?
Right.
Right. Among the striking aspects of your first 2 films, or Sarvam Talamai, was the musicality that was inherent in the work. And I want to ask you, I mean, you also did a documentary about Mridangist Umayyapuram Sivaraman as well, if I remember. And because it's such a key part of your work, I want to ask you how, I mean, does the short film format sort of limit, how you can play around with the music of it all?
Yeah, I mean, in some ways it doesn't give you the kind of length and width that a feature film gives you, because in Indian cinema, the unsaid aspects of the character is what the melodies bring out. So one of the reasons why melodies have died down in Indian cinema is because nothing is taboo. You can say whatever you feel like. But when somebody felt something for somebody, but you could not go and tell, when it was a time that you surreptitiously wrote a love letter and you didn't know whether you can say it or not say it, that's when the big melodies came out.
Right.
Hurt, pain, isolation, abandonment, not knowing where the other person is. Now there's no place you can go where you don't know. I mean, even if you're in the Galwan Heights, your wife can be texting you, I mean, there are people talking from Mount Everest on a Skyphone as they are getting frostbitten to death and they're speaking. And that's the kind of, so a love letter has become a very precious commodity. It doesn't exist, and people are saying yes or no to each other over Facebook or, a post or something. You realize you're out of a relationship. In that space, where is the space for the melody? So the films have become more talky and more edgy, and what is considered taboo is shown, and you're going much stronger into the narration, more brutal, more into it. So there are no nothing is off limits now. You can actually be more open. So in that format, when we are actually making something like a short film, you can be dealing with subjects which you can't otherwise deal in a feature film. So let's take, for example, I mean, feature film is hero-centric. It has to have a certain sense of romance. And, these are the kind of caveats with which you used to work, which I don't think is the case with a short film. So short film is it's like a short story. You're going precisely into one kind of situation and looking at it. So I was basically looking at a musician who works in a bar or in a hotel who is suddenly without work because COVID has come in, and then connecting with a friend who's a doctor and who's on the front line, a mother who is vulnerable, and how they all manage to get stuck in what happens, what past relationship, how it sort of unfolds, and what happens inside that.
I mean, it's fascinating you talk about this musician who loses work, because it seems like you've snuck in the music angle
which is one of the characters, which is barely there, because the film actually deals with something completely different. But
I see. Okay.
The vocation is just there. Of course, they do. I mean, remember some old songs and things like that. but it's not melody centric as my films would be.
And of course, you also
Yeah.
have Sikal Gurucharan, who's part of this film.
Yeah,
And that's another music angle. I'll probably
yeah,
stretch it just a tad further here. I wondered if you want to speak a bit about your own love for the form of music.
Yeah.
I mean, music is obviously an inherent part of cinema, of course, but it seems like it's more a part of your work than it is about many other filmmakers' work.
yeah. I think it's just because I was grown in a family where music was really important. My mother was a singer and things like that. So music has always been up in the air, and it was very normal that you would sit in the breakfast table and you would have Sangeet Sarita playing, and we'll say that film song is from this raga and this song, and we didn't know much of Hindustani music, so we would have a kind of a little ledger on which we will write the film song, and then whatever is announced, we would make notes of it. And that ledger would be kept on top of the fridge, and whoever else is sitting next to the radio would make a note of it. So we grew up in a thing where I was a quizzer, and there was a continuous quiz competition as to which film song is which rag, kind of a situation. It's like young people today being able to sing all the lyrics of all the Korean pop they listen to. It just so happened that our idea of melodies were what we were hearing in Malayalam cinema or Tamil cinema or Hindi cinema. So, and we were living through a period where there was extreme creativity, in tunes. Now, as the tune shifted, as music became more a celebration, but not the lyric writing was so important, and sometimes lyric could completely summarize the avastha of a character, or the entire film would come into a lyric. So that's what there was a lot of condensation that the emotional condensation that songs did. But I think we have moved on from there. There's it's no more a necessity. It's a choice. If you want, you can keep a song. If you don't want, you don't need to keep a song.
And
And
you don't
OTTs have,
necessarily, I'm sorry,
yeah.
and you don't necessarily mean this as criticism in any way. You're just observing the change that has occurred.
Yeah, it's just different types of time. There was a time where you used to have 10 songs, then there is 6 songs, then it became 3 songs. Now you can have one song, maybe. Not necessary.
But
Right.
do you think
I,
somewhere
I
we've lost
enjoyed.
that? Huh.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
think somewhere we've lost that particular USP that Indian cinema had really? Because when you look back at some of the songs that you staged or Mani Ratnam staged, I mean there was so much grandeur and there was so much spectacle involved, and that was particularly a USP of Indian cinema. You think somewhere we've lost that?
I mean, if you look at Italian cinema, there was a point in which Italian cinema had music also, and Italians had great, private stars of music in Europe, and it had a great tradition of opera. But the Italian cinema that came out was more inspired by neorealism
Yeah.
and things like that. So, sometimes your development is stalled because of the commerce surrounding a
Right.
certain product.
Right.
Whether it is endemic or whether it is really necessary for the narration is a question. Of course, the Bhagavata Melas have it, our traditional form of storytelling has it, but we are inherently westernizing our tunes, we are inherently going towards the Western system, and in the Western system, music is extraneous, and people are not able to understand why are these people singing, why are they dancing,
Right.
when there is so much. But they are not asking the question that when somebody is dying, why is the sitar Shehnai playing, or why that's playing. I mean, you accept background score, but you don't accept songs, and it's just a function of time.
Is it allowing our movies to travel better?
I think it will, and also now with OTT, you're going to be seen in 200 countries.
Right.
So, most of the content which has come out of Bombay on the OTT has crossed boundary lines, and it's watched so carefully outside the Bollywood angle. It's gone beyond Bollywood. So, like we are sitting here and watching Narcos, and I mean, however we thought that we would be watching something completely in Spanish, acted
Right.
by a German person of Portuguese origin. Now, all this has happened in the last 3 or 4 years. It was never possible. You had to go to a film festival to see something like this. But it's right there in your house. It's also there in somebody's house in a small town in Uttar Pradesh. So, we're going through a major change in film culture and film appreciation. And I don't think film knowledge is the can I say elitist, and it's just only available to those people who went to the Pune Film Institute or attended a film appreciation course. It's so broad based now, everybody everywhere. So that's why you're seeing brilliant films come out of Assam. You
Yeah.
know,
Absolutely with you.
so I think there's a great democratization that digital has brought, and this medium of OTT, which is sort of taking it forward. So I'm glad that we are doing this on OTT.
How excited are you about coming to OTT in long form storytelling? Are you looking at that as an option?
Yeah, absolutely. We are looking at it because I've been a great fan of the writing that's been coming out, and probably some of the best writing from the West has been on the OTT
Yeah.
space. I mean,
Right.
whether you take Fleabag or whether path-breaking writing that has happened.
You're actually Jane Austen and Phoebe Waller-Bridge in disguise. I think you are, Rajiv. Yeah.
It's a lot of similarity with that because especially the Emma-ness of her
Yeah.
character is so unique because
Yeah.
it's the first time you see a character who is not pure but who has cruel intentions but
Yeah.
is also vulnerable and also going through change. These are things that you study in characters which are very fascinating, and that's one of the things that when I saw in Breaking Bad, which struck me, is that how much of condensation is there, how much of thing, and I really liked Patal Lok when
Yeah.
it came. So there's so much of possibility that 400 minutes gets you. So I think it's not a plot-driven exercise, but it's more of a character-driven exercise. Character has to be interesting. Its routing has to be interesting, and performances. And great thing is you've got rid of these. You don't need to hang around Bandra and wait for these four great actors.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I mean, who are doing you a favor. I mean, so you just have a whole bunch of actors who are really good and giving themselves to you. And I mean, I'm glad this is happening.
I mean, returning to Puttampudu Kale, I would typically ask you if the duration allotted to you is limiting. I would typically ask you that. But given your work in the ad film space, I wonder if it's right up your alley anyway.
Yeah, I mean, I've done some short films with the Film Institute, and we're used to the 20-minute format. And I mean, it's a question of how you subdivide and then how do you create tension and release tension. So, I mean, if you see an average scene being around 3 minutes or 2.5 minutes, you got to time yourself back saying that, okay, I have to have 8 scenes where I should go through up and down or 9. So you're subdividing 25 into those kind of segments and saying, tell me a story within that. Don't tell me more than that.
Right.
And in that, we may write about 5 different things, and I don't know what the others are writing, but Amazon knows, and they'll probably tell you, no, focus on this. So then you focus on that one thing. So there's a bit of rewrite and rewrites that happen, which I do anyway for my own work because I make people read and then get back and try to.
Talking about working backwards, I saw you mention in an interview that you more or less shot the film backwards.
Yeah, I did.
With Sikil, who's I'm assuming not familiar with the acting space.
Yeah.
So what was that like? I mean, because films typically the performances get more intense as the film goes, right? Usually.
Yeah.
For you to do it in reverse.
It was cruel of me to put Sikil through that, but I wanted to show the passage of time. So Sikil, who's clean shaven, who I see him on concert stage, who looks like a doctor to me. I mean, he could probably walk around Apollo Hospital treating people with some major cat surgery or something like. He looks like, or he could be in IIT. He doesn't look like a Carnatic musician. He doesn't have an arm. He doesn't do all that, and he's well built. And so when I worked with him in Sarvam, I was quite shocked because singing and being an actor is fine. But when he had to hold his own against an experienced person like Nedumudi Venu in the car, I said, oh, this guy can really act. He was so relaxed on it. So then I wanted to show the passage of time. And the passage of time which you saw when I was to talk to my friends in Zoom and things like that, class reunions and all that, you always saw people just growing their beards. Yeah. Everybody's looking like F.W. Grace. So then I said that, so when I do hear this kind of a scraggy beard, I said, keep it, So he kept it. And then I said, okay, can we shoot it backwards? So I had a script reading, but unfortunately I had to get him to do the most complex scene on the first day and then work backwards. So I think it was very difficult for him. But he was game for it and he trusted me, and all the actors were really trusting and we really pushed hard on the acting in this case. And we had to do a lot of prep and call and do research, because the film takes you to places which we have not gone before physically,
Interesting.
in that sense. So she was really struggling with that, and we had to meet people and all this secretively while the pandemic is on. So with video calls and things like that. And
Rajiv, I understand that you guys were not allowed to have more than 10 people on the set.
yeah.
So was
Yeah.
your script designed to accommodate very minimal members of the cast, or was it the other way around?
No, I had close to 5 characters. I mean, coming in bits and pieces. Then you kind of knock those characters off, or somebody who's on a motorbike delivering something, saying something. Those characters disappeared even after they were in the script during the shooting stage. So like the process of optimization was happening all the time,
Right.
and to make it slimmer and leaner. So that aspect was quite kind of interesting. And it's a very different kind of a film, because it also deals with a female protagonist and people struggling with certain issues in their life.
Importance of a female character in this film.
Yeah.
And today there is a lot of awareness about portrayal of women and giving them a lot of strength and giving them a purpose. But I noticed that you did it even back in the 90s with Minsara Kanavu or Kandukonde and Kandukonde. I don't remember the times back then, but was that angle spoken about back then? Did people recognize the strength of the women in the film? Or do you find that this is a big change?
I think spoken about and discussed more openly in when we are talking about OTT, where you have content like FOMO shots, which is designed. It's not chick lit. It's like something more than that. It's like the opposite of it. So we are talking about more classical writing. We are talking about larger, more solid themes and things that are fascinating. And I think there's a lot more. I mean, what better understanding can you have than that you could have Sita and Draupadi in two epics? Those epics are nothing without them.
Oh, right at the center of them both, right?
Yeah, they drive the narrative. I mean, I was telling somebody, what if you were to say that there's a 10-headed guy and there's another super handsome guy and they're both fighting over some 10,000 war elephants and some 100 square kilometers of land? Would anybody have told the story? But when you keep a woman there, then it sort of makes the whole thing, work. And the same thing it's basically Draupadi's disrobing, which is going to run it into a kind of entire war. But essentially it's about men who are not ready to share vis-a-vis men who are ready to share a woman. So it's that ideas are all driven out of great women characters, because ultimately if you don't have women characters, how our grandmother is going to tell that story to somebody else? It's a purely practical aspect of storytelling, that the yin and the yang have to be balanced in a story.
So would it be right then for me to conclude that the emphasis that you lay on women in your work is partly on account of mythology, your love for it?
Mythology and the strong characters I've lived with. I lived with my grandmother, and she and I shared a bedroom together. So she was a very educated lady, and she had lost her son, and we were all still grieving and learning to cope with it. When she became my best friend, she was like 75 when she and I were, became friends. So, and my mother and my wife and my 2 daughters. So I just have only women around me now. Actually, I have dogs who are males.
Kaveri, please go on.
Yeah, no, I agree, Sudeep. That's really one of the most marvelous things about Rajiv's work. It really does capture, it's a female gaze from a male director, which is really unusual. Even in Kandukondan, the men are always performing for the women, whether they're dancing for her or coming out of a lake like Colin Firth for her. The men are forever performing, and I found that so fascinating. Um, because you usually see it from the other way around. The women are performing for the men and trying to catch their attention. Here it's always the men performing. So how was that, and how was it convincing these very macho guys that you know this is what you
I mean,
do?
they go with the story as such.
Yeah.
They don't think that much, you know. I mean, if the melody is interesting and the story is interesting, they you know, they and they don't really care. You know, if the story works, they're fine with it.
Right.
I think the dialectic, I mean, they become more dogmatic when they become superstars, and they
Ah,
probably are not acting for the story, but acting for the fans, you know,
right.
what they think the fans want. That's when things really start going wrong.
And that happens with so many stars, doesn't it, Rajiv? Which becomes so difficult for writers to write for them.
Yeah, and also, you know, you find there's even a lot of other cinema has a lot of hyper machismo in it. You know,
Yeah.
so even though they say they are, you know, films which deal with very modern progressive thought, but they're very squeamish when it comes to dealing with female desire or sexuality or anything of that sort. And that's what I think is exploding now, and you're seeing greater uh, uh, ideas about that. And in this film also there is enough slightly different things which you are you know, right now in hot topic in discussion, which you may see in the film,
Yeah.
which is
We're really.
dealt with in an interesting manner. So I think I'm not judgmental of what people do. You know, I just observe human beings as they are.
Right.
Rajiv, I also wanted to ask you about, when you talked about waiting for those 4 or 5 people in Bandra or Juhu to agree to star in your film, and things really have moved from there. But there's so many of your projects, your films that fell through because of one reason or the other. The stars didn't agree or whatever.
Yeah.
How is that? Must have been heartbreaking. I can't even imagine the number of scripts that must be lying in your
Yeah,
library.
absolutely. It was really disheartening and really terrible. And I have approached everybody, you know, at one stage. And I was called for so many meetings, so many things, and mysteriously things would just disappear. You know, I mean, you can, and it's not that one has not made a, you know, made a flop film or one. People
Yeah,
made blockbuster films, and then
blockbuster.
after that, if for some reason there's a pause button in your life, you can't do any damn thing about it. Only thing you can do is to go back, study, teach, learn, build a house, you know, cultivate your lotus garden. You can do anything to remain sane and not, you know, end up smoking and doping and, you know, probably, you know, killing yourself, you know, in depression. Because a lot of people can do that when they get into self-pity.
We've
But
just
people
seen
like us
that
have seen,
happening, Rajiv.
yeah,
We've just seen that happening in
yeah.
Mumbai.
And for people like us, we have seen death when we were 15. My father died at 15. He was 41. My family coped with it. We came out of it. So we believe in hope.
Mm.
You know, that it can, nothing can be more devastating than that.
Absolutely.
But my father was the only child. My mother was the only child. We didn't have barely had relations, but we could actually get through that. So once you have got through that, your survival instinct is so strong that you know that the darkest night will see a dawn break. And
Right.
that's what this title of this thing is. Uttam Pudukale. It is the new, fresh morning.
Right.
Because even the worst COVID is going to go past, and we're going to get out of this, you know, and we're going to believe in each other again. We have lost faith in human beings. We see another human being as a possible source of infection. That's what is the most dangerous thing about this COVID. It has
Absolutely.
dehumanized us. It has, in one way, told us that we don't need wealth. We only need 3 shirts. We only need 2 pants. We
Yeah.
don't have anywhere to go. Cars are no use because you can't drive them anywhere. Cell phones are no use. There's nothing. You can't show your wealth off, you know.
Yeah.
But at this, and you just need this bare necessity to be alive. But at the same time, when you see another human being, you're not reaching out to help because you're scared that that person will infect you. So it is a dialectic, a complete contrast between self-preservation and selfishness and empathy, that you're part of a human race which is under threat.
Right.
So
So
I think
yeah. Sorry. Please go ahead.
So I mean, I'm seeing the script. It's between us and me. You know, it is somewhere there. You know, that the
Right.
stories are.
But
Right.
tell me, Rajiv, I just want to go back a little and talk about those dark days. Because you kept yourself afloat. I think you started your teaching institute as well. You did so many ads and you kept your mind alive and engaged, obviously. But not everyone is able to do that. Not, as you said, not everyone has that kind of survival instinct or that emotional resilience. Do you see that declining in a sense in the fresh, in the new actors and breed of directors we have?
I think people are more fragile and people are more attuned to the fact uh, that they want a constant high, you know,
Yeah,
I mean, social media amplifies that. Oh God, I mean, how many likes have I got? I only got 4,000 likes. Oh shit, that fellow got 40,000 likes.
You're talking about
So,
the
you know,
dopamine hits, right?
yeah,
yeah,
Mm.
I mean, everybody is into this aspect, you know. So, how, I mean, like, if you look at my life, if you look at the house I have, if you look at the space that I have, I mean, my life is great. But if you look at me in relation to Steven Spielberg and say what my life is, it's terrible. But there's so many people who die to have my life, right? So it's
yeah,
Right.
only relative. The question here is that uh, mental health is a serious issue right now, and stimulants are playing havoc. And people think you need to pop a pill every night to sleep. People think you need to pop something, and also in the level of medical fraternity, it's like you can't afford to be sad. How can you be sad? You've got to be happy all the time. It's not possible.
mm,
Any story has the hero falling and coming up. Without that, it's not going to result in a climax.
right.
Human beings are like that. We grow out of our failures. We learn from them, and nothing is constant in the world, And that kind of philosophical aspect of accepting and being spiritual and not religious, I think, is more important.
Rajiv, I want to stretch this a bit further because we spoke about different aspects like social media, which give people instant rewards, so to speak, and people get hooked onto that. Is it fair to sort of draw a parallel with the star system and the sort of cinema that it generates? I'm wondering if that also goes through these moments in the films where it's about giving you those fleeting temporary pleasures as opposed to the sort of reflection you'd expect in deeper cinema.
Yeah, I think it's like I mean, a star is basically one who can fill X number of people into Y number of theaters for 4 shows into 10 days. That's what a star is,
Yeah,
right? So he's not a star if he doesn't have that janta going in and breaking those characters on.
Yeah, I wonder
So
if they're addicted then, in a
yeah,
sense.
I mean, they are addicted. And I used to, when I used to go to Ranthambore and shoot tigers, every time a tiger comes, there are 50, jeeps, and everybody go pat, taking pictures. And I used to look at these tigers and saying, what would they do in winter? I mean, the monsoon when the park is closed for 40. Probably these tigers will have depression or something.
yeah,
They're used to performing all the time for 40, 50 people. I mean,
absolutely.
sorry, 40, 50 jeeps. So they are always watched by 300 people. And they're pretty much like these stars who need that film. I have my Eid, I have my, Diwali, I need to get this many crores to watch. Must be terribly difficult. And therefore, they have come to believe that they are just changing the dress a bit, but they're basically playing themselves again and again and again.
Yeah,
And they're not playing the roles. So they've forgotten what acting is, and they are what stars are. So I think OTT has given them a miss and have gone for talent and stories, which I think is a very positive thing. And so many more people have got work now, and I'm glad that has happened. And there is no way a Patal Lok would have been made with these stars, and I'm
Absolutely.
glad it's that way. And I'm
Right.
glad that so much talent is coming out in Indian cinema.
Now, the OTT platforms in their nascent stage were thought of as, a heaven for new filmmakers, as for filmmakers who couldn't crack it in the feature film format for whatever reasons, for whatever complex reasons. I understand now that Netflix is also coming up with an anthology. So is Amazon Prime, and all the big names, including yours. You're all joining together to create this work. I wonder if now that the attention is on established filmmakers, even in these OTT platforms, should an assistant director hoping to crack it in these platforms be concerned at all?
Uh,
I mean, does it
I think,
reduce this attractiveness?
I think that, short films are giving so many people the ability to post their work or their quality of work without having worked for 10 years as an assistant director, and being a chamcha to somebody and hoping that a star will give you a break. That's gone now. You can be a short filmmaker. You can go boom, straight away make a 20-minute film, put it on YouTube, get it to some festival, and then you're made, right? So the rules of the game of entry in for storytellers have completely changed. Now, what you're talking about is if established directors are going to get preference over young filmmakers, then what do? Well, the fact remains that when investment is made, they want to know whether these guys can deliver.
Yeah.
So the people who are writing out checks for 40 crores, a lot of people have lost their jobs because it turned out to be turkeys. So a person who's commissioning work needs to make sure that the money put out is going to get final eyeballs in there. So they are also under a lot of pressure, the people who are commissioning the work. So I think it is a situation where you will see 2 or 3 grades of OTT platforms, and people will come in with smaller budgets and move up the scale. And just as you will have stand-up comedians and who will become actors. Some people will continue to be stand-up comedians. Some people will be independent music but will gravitate towards film music. You'll see all that movement of people within that, But I don't think ever there has been a situation in Indian cinema, maybe the time of K.A. Abbas and all that, where writers were given the prominence that it got. Writers are really getting their prominence now in the OTT space. Never before has the writing been as important as the casting.
Right. Just thanks, Sudhir. Just a last question to wrap up. Rajiv, how important is the writing in the film industry space? Do you think that's also gone through such a churn that it cannot remain driven by the stars anymore?
Yeah, absolutely. I think writing already became very important. Maybe 10 years back, where people took more complex stories and managed to pull it off, and actors were ready to be part of a great film. That's what made Amir Khan different from the others, because he was not saying, he was ready to be part of Rang De Basanti because he knew that was a good film. Or he was part of Three Idiots and saying, no, it don't have me in every frame. So I think writers who are smart realize the importance of writing, and I think that's only going to get stronger and stronger. If you want to get our Indian version of Breaking Bad on Narcos coming out, then it's really about greater writing and greater emphasis on writing. And I think we will be there. And hopefully we'll get great new grounds.
Great. And more of Rajiv Menon, please. Much
Thank
more.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank
Please,
you,
if you get the time on Netflix, you can see Sarvam Talamayam. And
of
please
course.
watch this on Amazon.
Of course. Thank you so much. Thank you, Sudhir. Thank you, Rajiv. All the very best.
Thank you guys. Thank you for talking to me.